This is the Manifest Your Greatness podcast, episode number 95. Hi, friends. I'm Curtis J. Washington. And look, the purpose of this podcast is simple. We are constantly being bombarded with messages like, we could be happy if only we had a particular thing, or we could be successful if only we made X amount of dollars, or we could be at peace if only so-and-so loved me. These messages are not only disempowering, but also they are simply not true. This is because it's not about where you are and where you want to be. It's about who you are right now and who you wish to become. Once you know what the ideal you looks like, then you will automatically start becoming aware of what steps you can take right now to move in the right direction. And the goal of this podcast is to help you look within and discover all the love, all the beauty, and all of the unlimited potential that you already possess, and for you to set it free for you and for the world to see. Welcome to the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast, where we explore practical and actionable steps that you can take to help manifest the greatness that you already possess deep inside. And today we have a special guest. His name is Dr. Fred Moss, and he is going to be talking to us today about a topic that I know you will find a lot of value in, and I just can't wait to get started. But Dr. Fred Moss is a renowned mental health advocate, keynote speaker, and psychiatrist with a passion for helping people find their authentic selves. As the founder of the Welcome to Humanity movement and True Voice Mastermind, Dr. Fred's work is centered on the power of communication to heal and connect people. He is the author of Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression, and Find Your True Voice, and has written numerous articles for Psychology Today. Dr. Fred's most recent work includes the True Voice course, which I can't wait to share more with you about today on today's podcast. And this course helps people rediscover their voice and share their message with the world. And Healing the Healer, a virtual course and mastermind designed to support transitioning healers. So Dr. Fred, welcome to the Manifest Your Greatness podcast.
It's just a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. And I'm not sure how my bio got all completed without mentioning how much I love podcasting. I am a podcaster, and Find Your True Voice is actually written with podcast as the backdrop template, as is the True Voice course. So both of them use exactly this medium because I think this is the premium medium to get our virtual true voices out there, like to actually get our core selves and what our major, genuine, authentic self-expression is about. I don't think there's a better medium. I know that there is no better medium in the world today than using podcasting directly for that purpose. So I am a podcaster. I have 2 podcasts of my own, and I love being a guest on shows. So it's really great to be here with you today as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And let's dive right into that to start, actually, because that was something that I was not aware of until I actually started going through a lot of the materials that was shared with me about the other things that you've done. I mean, you've done so many things, and I think I kind of narrowed in on the psychiatric part of your history and everything. And it was so exciting to learn how not only you view podcasts, but how it's become, it's almost like if we look at some of the things that you mentioned in your Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression, of course, finding your true voice builds upon this ability that we all have to share. And I mean, you mentioned this in other interviews as well, but how we all really want to be heard. It's a critical part of being human that we all want to be heard, and being authentic and getting out there, which you pointed out rightly so, is different from your identity. And I can't wait till we get into this discussion about the differences and everything about that, but how podcasts give you that medium, and it's one of the only mediums out there that you can still control your content, and you have an opportunity to be authentically you No one's going to tell you what you can or can't say. No one's going to tell you who you can or can't be. And it's such a wonderful exploratory process, and it's a great tool for self-discovery and connection. So I completely agree with you 100%. And I love how so much of what you've done, it's almost as if the ability to get out and speak your true self it can almost be considered like the epitome of conscious self-awareness and self-love and acceptance, and being 100% unapologetically yourself, is such a key thing that I hold so dear. But it's a challenge too, right? It's something
sure.
that we all struggle with, but there's a beauty in the struggle, and there's definitely so many benefits to taking the time and working through that barrier that I think we all maybe start with, and that's what is okay to say. What can I say without people not liking me or thinking that I don't have the right to say what I'm saying because I don't have the right degree or I don't have the right experience or whatnot. So thank you very much for for introducing that on top of everything that you've already shared with the world. I think that this whole idea, like you were saying, helping people find their true self and expressing their true self, it's so important these days.
It is so important, and most of us, you brushed up against this, but most of us, we have a true self, and each of us, we have something that is important to us. We have a core value system. We have a genuine, authentic process of dealing with the world around us. And most of us have really muffled or stifled or muzzled ourselves in the process of growing into an adult. We've learned how to actually become someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. Now, when you stop and look at that, there's something so insane about that. There's something so absurd, preposterous, and ludicrous about pretending to be someone you're not in order to protect the person that you are. Now, we have done that, and we learned how to do that when we were very young in school. We learned how to do it socially. We learned how to do it like you said, in order to be liked, in order to belong, in order to make sure that we weren't being too disruptive, in order to stay on the island, essentially. And we learned how to do that in such a way that there was like a crack in the cement that got created. And the crack in the cement has gotten larger and larger over time. And most of us as adults have never really gone back to repair that crack. So we continue to say, be, and do things that are not consistent with our core self. The first thing to get about that is be kind to yourself for having developed yourself in that way. Most of us know where we are not aligned with what we are saying or doing, but we do it anyway. We know when that happens. How do we know? Because we had to actually design that way of being. We actually had to design it, hang on to it, do it, reapply it, make sure we know who we told what to so that we could stay consistent with them. We had to give up on our own sense of truth so that we could make up whatever manifest and change we made up about the way that we look at things, and then keep it consistent so that somehow we look like we're aligned with ourselves. Now, in that process, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. There is a whole lot of efforting that went into doing that. And we can be kind to ourselves because all of us have done it. We can be kind, we can be gracious, we can be accepting, we can be forgiving, we can be compassionate with ourselves and allow ourselves to walk into the humanity that includes that particular characteristic. When we do that, we then can see that even if we're not 100% our real self, we can take incremental steps towards being our real self by saying one more thing that's consistent with who you are to your friends or your family or your colleagues. Like taking incremental steps towards speaking your true voice. Because when you speak your true voice, it is addicting. People love it. People get totally inspired by it. And you open up the gates for the people that you're with to actually speak their true voice as well, which is a gift to everybody in the room. Ultimately, when you are aligned with yourself, then you open up the alignment of another person in that presence. And the tuning fork that you are, the resonating harmony that you are, begins to resonate harmonically with other people in the room. And that's where human connection actually gets made. When that human connection actually gets made, right at the heart of that is healing. That's where healing happens. Have you ever noticed when someone's totally aligned with you, the freshness that comes out of that experience? Like just an explosion of, wow, I love being human, or I love being with this person, or I love being me, because somebody gets me. Somebody has heard me. Somebody has seen me. Somebody has valued me. And the way that they have done that is they have allowed their authentic self to resonate with my authentic self. And in that process, that is the birth of the whole healing connection that I speak of in my books, both in the Creative 8 and in the Find Your True Voice book. And we also take advantage of it, of course, inside of the True Voice course, where we teach people how to really find their true self. And then we use podcasting as a template. It's not a requirement, but we use podcasting as a template to help people become hosts or guests or even really avid listeners and understand what the whole value is of being fully self-expressed and then listening to others in their self-expression.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And one of the things that you said that really just, it really resonated with me. Everything that you're saying, I definitely understand. Like you were speaking about that tuning fork, right? The frequency and the resonating with the other people in the room, and how when you have a true, authentic conversation, you feel that, and it's something that sticks with you, and the whole being in the present moment for who you are and being there as yourself. When you have that experience, it's so different than getting through the day, right? When you're going through the day and you're speaking with people and you are making sure you come across in a certain way and that you're not making anyone uncomfortable, and you have this heightened awareness around how your message is getting out, and you're filtering yourself throughout the day, and you're also trying to create a buffer so that when you hear something, your psychological guard is keeping you safe too. I'm trying not to take things too negatively and trying to not make sure you don't misunderstand someone else. And there's this tension, this natural tension, and there's energy that's spent going through that whole process. But when you have those authentic conversations, when you're with someone and you're like, this is really what I want to talk about, you're hearing me, and you are actually sending back to me something that is helping me learn and helping me grow, helping me feel engaged, helping me feel like I belong, helping me feel safe. So they're two completely different experiences. And I love how you brought that up, because I think it's very easy to not seek that authentic experience because we've trained ourselves so well over the years, right?
Exactly. We have trained ourselves over the years. You couldn't have said that better. And the idea is that they're really, that's because one of these conversation types that you're talking about is really built in just surviving and defending and, making sure you look good, all of those things. And there's so much energy, and making sure you don't upset people, et cetera. There's so much energy spent in the process in that particular conversational style. And it really does interfere with being your truest self. When you're your truest self, those things take on much less importance. It's not my business what you think about me, for instance. It just isn't. It just isn't. Why? How could I make it my business? Now, on the one hand, if I see that you're having a hard time with me, or you don't like what I said, or what I said has upset you, it can be my business to adjust what I say next to deal with that, to at least be responsible for having created some degree of agitation over there or some degree of concern. But it's really not my business what you think of me or what anyone thinks of me. My business is to continue to express myself fully and totally along the lines of what's important to me, what's at my core values, what's the essence of me. The thread that has been here for every year and every day that I've been alive, that continues to be here and knows it's good and bad for me, knows what's right and wrong for me, knows what I want to say and what I think about things, and doesn't necessarily want to just gloss it over or say something different, or in many cases, actually say things that even I don't believe.
Yeah.
Have you realized that people sometimes say shit that they don't even believe?
Yeah.
What is that, man? That is unbelievable. That's not even lying. That's beyond lying. Saying things out loud as if you believe them when you don't even believe them. What a
Yeah.
crazy set of experiences that must go into having fabricated that particular that particular psychological or conversational style. And we all know what I'm talking about. I've done it. I've said things that I don't believe. What is that? It's like the ultimate in preposterousness.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, it's really a challenge to not do that in so many circumstances when so much of what we have been trained to do and the jobs we find ourselves in and the way that we're rewarded for doing certain things. I one of the things that I find is so one of the most difficult things I think for any professional to navigate is when you have, and I went through this myself, my story is actually, it has a comical ending, but it was not funny at the time I was going through it. But basically, being put in situations where you're good at what you do and you are learning material and you are, in my case, my job was to get funding for projects and to lead projects and things like that. So you had to proselytize people, right? You had to get them on board. You had to bring them in. You had to feel like this was something that was important to them and it mattered. And you end up doing these things and you have this inner tension going on over time on some of the projects. And I think everyone feels this, but for some the voice is louder than others. For me, it was growing and growing and growing, and it was, as I was going through it. Of course, it was confounding. It was frustrating. I was, I was having my emotional swings were all over the place because I felt like I was at odds with myself, and I was taking it out on people and trying to placate myself with buying things I didn't need. All of this just to make that voice quiet down and just make it think that things are okay. And meanwhile, I'm being told by my manager, you're doing a great job. Keep up what you're doing. Here's some more money so that you can keep doing what you're doing and keep getting better at doing what you're doing. And I'm thinking inside, to keep doing what I don't believe I should be doing.
Exactly.
And now I'm being rewarded for it. So we find ourselves in these situations so often. And the comical part for me, looking back on it now, I find it comical, is that eventually I was laid off, which for me was like, great, someone else took the decision out of my hands and said, we don't need you anymore. And I'm like, excellent. I don't have to put up with this anymore because I was doing something I didn't believe in, but I was afraid to say no. I thought it'd be irresponsible to turn the money down, to turn the position down, to have to go to my friends and say, I quit. And they'd be like, you quit that company? What's wrong with you? You were getting paid so well. So it's really a challenge to get to that point.
Yeah.
So I feel for everyone.
Yeah, it is for everyone. And again, we talked a little bit, I think it's Henry David Thoreau who said the mass of men go through life in quiet desperation and go to their graves with their songs still in them. And, there's something about that. There's something about many of us have chosen or have been at least highly encouraged to not speak our truest self, to actually represent a company or represent an industry or represent an entity of some sort. I mean, sometimes it's our family we're representing, and we do so without our whole and honest truth on the line. We do so knowing that what we're saying is not aligned with what we know to be true or what we know to be valuable. And that's where the source of dis-ease happens. That's where, when you're misaligned with your own self, there is, that dichotomy is just a sham. You start living in duplicity. You start living in what you know to be true and what you pretending to act to be true. And those things are totally different. You can expect that there's going to be some busting going on inside of your physical, emotional, spiritual, or intellectual self to deal with the fact that you no longer are resonating even within your own self. And we all understand that. That's the other thing. Is there's nobody and there's no human, including the monks in Tibet. We think about the monks in Tibet. Why do you think they go into caves? It's to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's to deal with this. That's why they go. Why do they want to quiet down the whole world? Why do they meditate 8, 10, 12 hours a day? It's so they can deal with this. This is the human condition. This is it. This is the embodiment of the human condition. This is the essence of the human condition. And what's the great news is that we have access to doing something about it. We can hover over ourselves. We can make incremental changes in how we be and how we act and in what we say and in how we carry on our life. We can make those changes, and we can do so by just really having respect for all that we've done up until now. And then what's really so for you right now. It does take some energy and some courage to speak what's so in front of a group of people that you're not sure is going to receive you favorably.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that there's a couple divisive topics out there in the world recently?
There's a few.
Yeah, there's a couple, right? Like nearly everything we talk about has a chance of upsetting someone else in the room. Right. And, which side are you on the war? Which side are you on Black Lives Matter? Which side are you on COVID? Which side are you on, climate change? Which side are you on election? Which side are you on, even things, I guess there's not that many people who speak favorably of like sex trafficking, except for the traffickers. And there are a ton of those out there. It's a major, major issue in the world. And we end up not speaking our truth for fear that we'll get in trouble. What a shame because ultimately the greatest threat in the world isn't anything that I just named. It's not COVID. It's not climate change. It's not racism. It's not the war in Ukraine or the war in Israel. It's not sex trafficking. Those are all massive threats, and each one of them and many others could actually take down humanity like that. That could be the end of humanity. Inside of those monstrous topics is the possibility of just massive implosion and explosion. I'm not denying that. I am just saying that those are not the biggest threats in the world. The biggest threat in the world is what you and I are talking about today, and that is that we're no longer speaking our true voice collectively or individually. Why do I say that? Because it's going to take our true voice to deal with any of these other threats. It is the fire extinguisher that is required in order to take on any of those other topics that I named. People who are on different sides of the topic, different sides of the aisle on a particular topic, are going to have to communicate effectively in order to get to the other side of any solution in any of these areas. So it's going to take courage, and it's going to take a complex listening. We're going to have to be able to listen to people who have things to say that are different than what we think about things. Somehow I've had people tell me, if you were them, you would do and think everything that they say and do. You would. If you lived a life that they lived up until now, you would have the proper information to actually say and be exactly who they are. Can we be compassionate enough with the people who disagree with us, who are directly oppositional to what we have to say, and actually give them the time of day to listen to what it is that they have to say and take it in without fear of contagion? Many of us feel like if we listen to the stuff that the adversaries are saying, who are diametrically opposed to what we have to say about a particular issue, that maybe we'll catch the fever. Like if I have to listen to somebody who has that view on that topic, I'm not going to do that. I refuse to even listen to that person. There's a lot of trouble that emanates from that particular decision point. Once you have decided that you cannot even listen to a person, you have created a massive problem for yourself and the community. Now, I understand what it's like not to want to listen. It's funny if my wife would be like, Fred knows how to not listen. It's true. I know how to not listen for sure. I know how to selectively mute myself. And It's like, no, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to think that. I don't want to be exposed to that. I don't want to have to deal with somebody who disagrees, directly with me. However, the only way we're going to make things right in this world, and if you haven't looked, it's like 11:59 and 45 seconds on the planet right now.
Yeah.
If we're going to do anything in these next 15 seconds to keep this planet alive, one of the things that we're going to have to actually do is be able to listen to each other. If we can't do that, it's curtains, dude. So really, put a fork in it. It's over. We're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think social media obviously is not helping. The way now that you can manipulate and take things out of context is not helping. The way that you can find yourself in a silo of just people who are of the same opinion that you are and not even realize it, right? Because your Google search has this memory of, it has a history of what you're looking for and says, hey, you might like this, you might like that. And you end up thinking this is normal, this is the way, I'm right and everybody else is wrong, look at all the news. You don't even realize
Exactly.
you're in this silo.
Yeah.
And then of course you have this whole, like you were saying, the divide sometimes being so wide and so terrifying with the way that they speak about the other side in whatever the topic may be. It's like you become, if, like you said, you catch something or you become what you say you are. It's almost like you can't be in this conversation or have any of these thoughts and still claim to be like, there's, of course, you've heard like the un-American, you can't say this or have a conversation or consider these things. If you do, you're not American, you're anti-American or whatever. And it's just like,
Yeah.
how can, and then it's a difficult space. But like you said, it's so important. And like you said too, about not only having that conversation, but having the ability to not turn off when these topics come up or to dismiss someone when they say something that is of another ideology or whatnot, because you lose so much in that dismissing, right? You lose an opportunity to learn about yourself, about someone else, to find perhaps another piece of the puzzle that you were missing. And I think one of the things that scares so many people is they want it to be simple. They want it to be, this is right and this is wrong. And taking in complexity, taking in conversation that kind of goes against or brings in information that you have told yourself is not correct, it kind of stifles your ability to even hear. Like, it's amazing how I've heard so many times before that if you're of one belief or of one political party, it doesn't matter what someone says to you, you're not going to change. And it's like, well, if no matter what someone says to you, you're not going to change, you must not be listening at all. Because every time I hear something and I'm truly listening, I learn something, and that actually contributes to my decisions. It contributes to the way that I think about the world or the way that I think about a particular organization or whatnot. So, I mean, it's scary that that the complexity seems to be what scares people, and entertaining those types of conversations and a discussion, for a lot of people, they don't see it as healthy. They see it as, like you said, toxic, right? And
Yeah.
that's such a difficult thing for me to get my head around.
Right. No, it really is. And, it's like, what will it take? I wrote an award-winning article called Global Madness, What It Takes for Us to Unite. And it's on my website, and it's also in my drfred360.com as well. And I'm really proud of the article. I like it. And the idea is that what kind of monstrosity would have to take place for all of us to drop our guns and to actually drop our differences and have to work together for a particular purpose? Like, could there be anything in the world that would actually create, human connection at the heart of all healing? Like, to actually create a necessity for all of us to work along the same lines with each other. How would that look? Now, one way that would look, it's like when I wrote the article, which was still about 4 years ago, it was the idea that maybe a Martian invasion would be enough if we knew that the Martians were coming in 30 days, and in order to keep this planet solid, we needed to find a way to work together in different countries, different races, different sexes, different ideologies. We needed to find a way to design a way to actually protect the planet from an outside influence. Even then, however, like right now, I'm not positive that a Martian invasion would be enough. There'd be all sorts of of fractured systems looking at that as well, and all sorts of dissemination that would probably not allow for even an organized effort to work together for that purpose. So I'm not sure what level of event would have to take place, or what level of contextual reconfiguration would have to take place to have us all feel the necessity, the urgency, the requirement to speak our true voice effectively without being insulting, and more than anything else, actually open up our ears and our mind enough to listen to opposing viewpoints and at least pay enough respect to allow them to coexist with our so-called self-righteous view of being certain that we know what's true and what's not, when clearly, like you said, we've been funneled and siphoned into little holes to believe what we believe based on facts that have been served up to us that we just simply take as being the gold standard. And many of us have different facts that lead in that way, which leads to all sorts of different factions all over the world, different factions on the same topic. Like there are people that I think are really brilliant who believe stuff that I simply can't believe at all to be true. Not even for a second. I'm like, you're really smart and you think that? How is that possible? And yet that's just the way the world has unfolded up until now. So we're coexisting with people who are impossible to understand. And the key here, I think the gift that we all have, is that it's not really risky to listen to somebody. Yeah. It's one of the things out there. You can't put your foot in the mouth when you're listening. You can't get in trouble listening. You can't actually it's so safe. It's maybe the safest thing to do out there in the whole world, especially for when you start looking at return on investment. Like, for the amount of time and energy it takes to just stop, just chill and listen to what's happening out there. The payoff is so ridiculously large when you're capable of doing that. Like, there's no cost and unbelievable levels of benefit that become available. And yet many of us find it I can't tell you how many times I'll be speaking this, like if I speak at a keynote and there's 50 or 100 people in the room and I say something like this, I see people in the room just shaking their head like, no, I'm never going to listen to that stuff. Why do I have to listen to that stuff? Why would I, he's psychotic, or they're psychopathological, or, they're just dead wrong. Why would I have to waste my precious time even listening to them? Yeah. And I'm saying that there is some deep value in working that muscle to learn how to listen to everything that's going on in the world. And that gives you the greatest starting point, the greatest launching point to doing, like, the more you know where you are, the better chance you have to get where you're going. I mean, that GPS technology, like, GPS can't get you from here to New York unless it knows exactly where here is. And right. You can't go anywhere that you're going unless you know exactly where you are. And the only way you're going to know where you are is by opening your ears and your mind and your listening to what's really going on in the world around you, so that you get access to where you really are, so you can make decisions to move in the direction that's important to you based on your true essence, your true voice, and your capacity to communicate and connect with other people.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And when you were saying there's nothing safer than that, and the benefits are just astronomical, right? And I was, as you were saying that, I was also kind of thinking, for the person listening, of course, there's so much that they can gain from not talking and actually listening and paying attention to what someone is saying. It could be very informative. It could help add some color to some predispositions that you may have had, some assumptions you may have had. And then on the other side, right, because we were actually talking about this earlier, how everyone really wants to be heard.
Right.
So that opportunity for you to listen is also an opportunity for someone else to feel heard.
Right.
And that alone is so cathartic, right? It can be, even if it's coming off as they're upset or that they just don't think highly of you or whatever, as you're taking this in and as you're listening to why they think what they think, that alone is such a release for them to be able to finally have an opportunity. Like it's probably not something that just popped into their mind. It's something they wanted to get off their chest more than likely, and it's something that they really wanted to get out. And maybe something you said kind of set them off, and they now here they are, and they're spewing forth all these things that they were holding inside, and they've had a chance to get it out. You've had a chance to learn about potentially what you were not aware of that this person was going through, or why they thought that way, or something you did that this person is making obvious to you now that you're like, I didn't realize I did that. So there's so many benefits to that, to listening, like you were saying. And so it's so true. It's so true. Yet at the same time, it's so safe, and it's almost as if that people, that primal fight or flight, right, that we had when we were back in the old days, where this could be a life-threatening situation, and now we're talking about a conversation but having the same reaction sometimes, and we're not allowing ourselves to just be present. We always want to make sure that we're defending ourselves and not giving that whole exchange an opportunity to develop in a new way.
Exactly. And, it does take practice. And that's the other thing. It's like, if you're not doing it, if you're one of your listeners is listening right now and you know who you are and you're not doing it, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's really okay. You don't have to tear yourself into shreds for not being able to listen to someone else. Although I do invite you the next time you get an opportunity to actually listen to someone you disagree with. Actually, go ahead. They happen to be your brother or sister anyways. We're only one family here.
Right.
We have 7.8 billion of us. We're all in the same family. And we're in that human family, and each and every one of us, I believe each and every one of us, 7.8 billion, are interested in being heard and seen for who they are. In this planet, on this dimension, that's what they're really looking for. That's what people really want more than anything. There's a massive urge, a surge to being seen and heard for who you are, and to make that kind of difference while you're here. Whether it's by your family, your kids, your spouse, or whether it's out in the community making a difference with a project or with a collaboration of some sort, or whether it's just taking walks on your own and being out in the community, meeting new people. What you want more than anything is to be heard. And if you even look at the people who are really like the hateable people, the people you are like, no, that is the worst person on the planet. Like you have most of us have already designed somewhere like a top 10 worst people on the planet kind of thing. And, even those people, what they want more than anything is to be heard. The little child inside of them, or the person who's making plans to annihilate the universe, what they want more than anything is to be heard. And I'm not that great at it either. I want to make that very clear. There's like some of these people, like I know who fits that list for me. I'm not prepared to speak to it right now. And it's like, I don't want to listen to them. I don't want to spend my time listening to them because I think they're dangerous. I think they're horrible. I think they're going to hurt me and hurt my people and hurt my friends. And, those people, it's hard to open up your ears for that, but I need to tell you that I know better, and know that listening as best I can to what it is they're coming from, where it is that they're coming from, and how they got to where they got to serves everybody's very well. It doesn't mean I have to agree in any way to what they have to say, but it's not very dangerous to actually just listen.
Yeah.
Highly valuable skill.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and back when we were talking a little bit about this whole idea of self-expression and creativity as being such a part of improving your mental state and finding out your true voice and becoming more authentic, you have you're very well known for this concept and this practice that you coined, undoctored, to be undoctored. And I was really curious if you could share with everyone what that is and how it can be so powerful and empowering as a method
Yeah.
to improve your mental health.
Right. So, I went into the field in 1980, I'd say is really the first time that I went into mental health. And that was after I had dropped out of college for the second time. And I came home and told my mom that I'm never going back to university for any reason ever again, period. That was it. I've had enough. It's not where I want to learn how to communicate. That's not happening in school. And I need to just not go back. I need to find another alternative life. And like any mom, and my mom was great, she said, that's fine. Let's go get you a job. I'm like, oh, mom. So she got me a job. She got me an application for a state mental health job in a state mental health facility for adolescent boys. And that's where I really learned again that communication was where where all the money was. That's where all the heart of the matter was communicating with these kids, connecting with these kids who were only 6 or 7 years younger than me, and really getting and understanding them created a bi-directional health healing experience. I loved that job a lot, but the thing I didn't like was psychiatry. And I didn't like psychiatry because it had already gotten to the point that the psychiatrist didn't see himself as someone who needed to communicate. They instead came down and they heard the complaint, Jimmy's up too late, or Timmy and Tony got in a fight. And then they talked to the kids for a few seconds, then talk to us for 6 or 8 more seconds, and then go to the nursing office and write some note. And then we'd have to go retrieve Timmy or Tony or Jimmy and bring them down to the quiet room and hold them down, literally hold them down, and pull down the hip part of his sweatpants and jam them full of some adult grade antipsychotic, anti-anxiety, medication cocktail. And if he stayed in a stupor for 24 hours, that was considered a success story. Now, that wasn't in the past for those who are listening. That's happening today all over this country. That's happened many hundreds of times already today in this country, that exact experience. So let's not fool ourselves like that's archaic or that's back in the day. No, that's still happening. This chemical restraint thing is a big deal inside of hospitals and inside of prisons and jails, to be true. And nursing homes, for that matter. Anywhere that has a locked door, that's one of the reasons that it's locked, because that stuff happens in the back of the locked rooms. Anyways, moving on, I realized then that I wanted to become a psychiatrist so I could bring communication effectively back into that field. It isn't because I wanted to be a psychiatrist so that I could do all the medicating, but by the time I got out of school and out of my residency, that's what was being asked of me. Prozac had been introduced to the world, that total paradigm shift all over the world when Prozac came. I mean, the idea all of a sudden was that if you're uncomfortable, that's your fault. And that we have a pill to actually make you uncomfortable, to uncomfort you. And it didn't really work, by the way, to do that, but they thought they marketed it that way. And biological psychiatry and chemical imbalance became things. Now, over the next several years, that's what I did. I had already had sunken costs, and I learned how to diagnose, and I learned how to medicate. And I medicated several, I think in my career, I've probably written over 100,000 prescriptions. And I think I've signed off on over 30 or 40,000 charts. The idea here is that each and every medication that I wrote, I felt it. I knew it wasn't the best thing that I should be doing. Each and every one. So they like chipped away, it's like death by 1,000 cuts, and I eventually reached a point where I was no longer capable of keeping to do that. So in 2006, I began to do something a little bit different and a little bit seemingly radical, which was I began to take people off their medicine. Like, whoa, you did what? It's like, I know, but when they came on their medicine, there was a tacit agreement that if the medicines didn't work, we'd get you off of it. Even though it's not written that way, no doctors know how to take patients off of medicines. They follow these funny rules that are given to them by the drug companies themselves, tapering and all those things. But I began to take people off of medicines, the low-risk patients, and lo and behold, they got way better. And usually their whole diagnosis disappeared. And I was like, wow, these medications are causing the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Pretty exciting. It's really a great finding. Except what am I supposed to do with it? I mean, there's a nice little city hall here. There's a big lobby of people who, like the big pharma lobby is large, and I can't just go to the top of the hill and tell people these medicines are causing symptoms or marketed to treat. So I wanted to get violent for a little while. I thought about it, like getting violent, at least with my words. But then I realized over time that that's not going to be effective. So I need to find a way to be articulate and calm and, and cooperative. And eventually kept on looking at what is there to do about this. I mean, I'm not going to take down City Hall. I'm not going to take down psychopharmacology across the board. I'm not going to prove that they're inappropriate or ineffective. But what I can do when I started looking at it was realize that it's not the psychopharmacological problem. You see, very few patients and no outpatients are being held down and forced their medicines every day. People take their medicine because they think there's something wrong with them. What if people saw that there's nothing wrong with them? What if the general population got to believe that even when they're really, really uncomfortable, even when they're feeling miserable, even when they've experienced something unspeakable, even if they're in sheer pain, even if they're total discomfort and misery, what if they saw that that was essentially just a part of being a human being in this crazy, challenging world at the present time? And you're doing like all of us are doing, just making it through the world using whatever skill set and whatever habits and whatever ideas that you come up with to get through the day, one at a time. If you could get people to see that there was nothing wrong with them, then they would immediately learn that there's no reason to take medicine. Because the only reason they take medicine is they're pretty sure that they got a condition that somebody told them they have, and they were willing to agree that they have it. So hence from that, I started taking people off of medicine a little bit more regularly. And I began to work around the world. I worked all over this United States, and I also worked overseas. I worked in London and Paris and Israel and a little bit even in Thailand, and began to really look at like, what can we do to help the situation? And really all that we can do, and that's the other thing is that psychiatry, the diagnoses in psychiatry are culturally specific. What looks like sick inside California doesn't even look sick inside Calgary sometimes, but certainly doesn't look sick inside of Singapore or Zimbabwe. It's a whole different game. You can have the exact same symptoms and be in Zimbabwe and no one will even notice or even write you off at all as being sick. They might say you're sad, they might say you're afraid, or they might say you're a shaman. They might say anything. And because it's variable and there's no definition, because there's no variable, then there is no definition, which means that like when a word is different in different parts of the world, when an actual concept shifts, then it means that it doesn't have a pure definition. Without a pure definition, it is open to an entire paradigmatic shifting narrative conversation. We can shift the narrative on what mental illness is. What the Undoctored does is it builds on all of that by doing three things: undiagnosing, unmedicating, and undoctrinating people. Basically, by undiagnosing people who are ready, who realize that maybe there's been nothing wrong with them the whole time. Once they get that, they can feel comfortable with, wait, I don't need to keep taking these medicines then because there's nothing wrong with me. And they may, in fact, be causing the symptoms that they're marketed to treat in the first place. And with all of that in place, we have undiagnosing, unmedicating, and undoctrinating being a way to deal with people who are ready for that intervention. Now, people who have already made the decision to be on a bunch of medicines, they're very hard to work with as the undoctor, because they've already bit the bullet. They've already decided through and through that there's something wrong with them. They had to get that way before they started taking these sometimes toxic medications every single day and lining up at the pharmacy every single month so they never run out, because they're afraid to run out, because if they do, then they'll get worse. And everyone knows that it's better to take medicine than to not. That's a hard group to work with. So the group I preferably work with is the group that is interested or curious about coming into the field in the first place, and remind them that there are multiple different directions you can take with being psychologically uncomfortable that can lead towards optimization without ever having to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist or take any medicine or receive a diagnosis or anything. That's the Undoctor's general whole idea here. The general modus operandi for the Undoctor is just undiagnosing, unmedicating, and undoctrinating, meaning after you're undiagnosed, you won't need medicines. And since you don't need medicine and you don't have a diagnosis, you certainly don't need a doctor. So I'd like working myself out of a job in that direction, essentially helping people see that maybe, just maybe, there was nothing wrong with them in the first place. And yes, can be imbalance or dysfunction, but that can be dealt with in multiple different areas, in multiple different directions that don't have to include anything called conventional psychology or psychiatry or conventional mental health the way that we know it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you pointed out that the normal, right? There is no normal, and if you have no variable, how can you have a constant definition? That's
Exactly.
beautiful. And one of the things that I think is difficult for some people is especially as you know, as we were discussing before with social media and what people are uh, comparing themselves with other people. I'm a parent. I'm guilty of that on occasion with my own kids, and I'm like, oh, I got to stop. I have to make sure I'm looking at my daughters, and even them. Of course, they're very different. So to them, what resonates most with them in the way that I speak with them, or examples that I give them, or my approach to dealing with something that happened with them at school is so different. And I find that this whole idea of when you are, as you said, if you are under the impression that something is wrong with you, if you feel that there's something wrong with you, and someone, corroborates that, and you go to someone and they say, "Oh, yeah, you're
There's something wrong with you.
depressed."
Yeah.
Or you have trauma, and I had a good friend of mine, Dr. Irene Kopp, on the show a few weeks ago, and she was mentioning that everyone has trauma, and she was saying everyone has. She called them traumas with a small t. Like there's traumas with a big T that we all look at and we say, "Oh yes, they've been to war and they've seen horrific things. Of course, that's going to have a traumatic experience. They went through traumatic experiences. That's going to have impacts on the way that they see things and the way that they interact and all these things. But all of us have been through what she was calling small t's. And it's okay. These are things we have to become aware of, but we shouldn't ignore. But to think that we are broken or that there's something wrong with us because we've had some traumatic experiences in our lives, once we allow that trauma or we allow a diagnosis, like you were saying, to become the definition or to become something that we look at and say, well, this is why I'm doing that, because I have this.
Exactly.
And, just the idea of, well, you know what, everybody is carrying these things. And if there is a way that we can approach situations out of a broader understanding that these are human experiences. And yes, some people may try to hurt themselves and they need special attention or hurt someone else. But going back to what you said about being heard, it's so important, I think, for people to realize that it's okay to be not okay sometimes. That's a situation. And sometimes that is exactly what we need. It's not what we want. It's not what we want to experience. We're not enjoying it. But if we don't have an opportunity sometimes to process these things, and of course, we're not saying that everyone should go in a corner and just deal with their problems. Of course, get help, get assistance, have someone to speak with, like you were saying, have an opportunity to be heard. It's so important to have those opportunities. And I think it's also very empowering for individuals if they understand that I am okay. Something happened to me or something is happening to me that I don't like, but I as a person, this is who a person is. They go through these things, and I don't need the thing that I want to avoid, if at all possible, is having some of my personality taken away from me by being on certain medications or things like that, which can then, of course, dull or make it even more difficult for them to actually grow through those experiences, because those feelings and emotions and the opportunity to process is being dulled and diminished as well. So I applaud you for what you're doing. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and some of these medicines, it's kind of well known now that some of these medicines dull us, but some of them actually make us too excited as well. So they just mess with our equilibrium.
Yeah.
You're pointing to a couple things that come to mind. Number one, like, why do we take on these diagnoses in the first place? Why, psychiatry is a funny field. It's like the only field out there in subspecialty in all of medicine where if you tell someone that they're okay, they get furious.
That never happens anywhere else. You're right.
If you go to another doctor and they tell you you're okay, you're like, cool, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
If you go to a psychiatrist and they tell you you're okay, you're like, dude, where'd you get your license? Like, why? I didn't come here to learn that I was okay. I came here to get confirmation that what I'm doing isn't me and that I need to relinquish responsibility for the parts of my life that I'm not aligned with.
Right.
And I need to have that condition actually confirmed. I need you to tell me that I have ADD or I have bipolar, I have narcissism, I have autistic spectrum disorder, I have anxiety disorder, I have depression, I have schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, I have, whatever I think I have, social phobia or post-traumatic stress disorder, any of those conditions. Because once you tell me that, then I have an actual alibi, if you will, a reason to explain why I'm a jerk. And when in fact, what's really here to be gotten is that I'm a jerk. That's not so easy to actually accept. But, several times per day, I make really silly mistakes, really sometimes bad. Sometimes I do hurt people inadvertently, usually. But sometimes, I'm just human. And so are you. And so is everyone. And sometimes we make mistakes that we are not proud of. We feel guilty about. We feel shame about. We feel blame about. And if we can write that off to a condition, that's not me, that's my bipolar. That's not me, that's my ADHD. That's not me, that's my social phobia. When we can do that, we get an opportunity to relinquish responsibility for the areas in life that we're not proud of. Now, that's not true with everybody. For your listeners out there who are totally certain you have a psychiatric condition and you're getting the exact treatment you wish you could have, and you like your medicines and you like your therapist and you like your doctor, and you couldn't imagine it being any better than it is right now, by all means, please absolutely keep doing what you're doing. If you have found that in any area of life, including psychiatry, any area, if you're at that point in your life where you have reached a point where you're like, this is the killer, this is exactly what I am, this is exactly what I need, this is exactly the therapist I want, exactly the medicine I want, exactly the condition I have, and I wouldn't want to even change it one iota, by all means, please don't change it. I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to the other hundreds of millions of people who meet different criteria when it comes to their psychiatric condition, who already know that they're being mistreated or misdiagnosed or they have a misaligned understanding of who they are. They already know that. And they want some assistance in getting back in line. Those people should know that it's conceivable to actually give up on your diagnosis, to realize that there's nothing wrong with you. And if there's nothing wrong with you, then you don't need fixing, and you certainly don't need medication. And if you don't need any medication, there's nothing wrong with you. You actually probably can get away without ever having a formal psychiatric contact. Again, I love my psychiatric brothers and sisters. They're fine. They're great people. I don't have a problem with them. I'm not actually pulling patients from them. I'm just saying it's possible that there are multiple other ways to get your misery refunctioned, to have yourself be realigned, that don't include coming down through Main Street into the conventional psychiatric system. So, that's one piece. And that's why people like seemingly taking on diagnoses. And the other thing is that, and I think you spoke to it briefly as well, I heard you say it in a different form, which is you are not stuck by the habits that got you to right now. Your next move does not have to be the same as the ones that were the habits that got you to now. You have some dominion over the next things that you say or do. It does not have to be the same way you've done it, even if you have a nice neural pathway that has a habit formed. You could do something different. Or you could do the same and blame it on the things in the past. You do get the choice to actually go a different direction with each now as each now appears. That's just simple truth. I'm not saying anything that controversial there. Yes, we have habits. When I get upset, someone might say, I smoke a cigarette. Yeah, maybe. How about if you don't smoke one now? How about if you get upset and you don't smoke one? How about that? What happens then? Oh, I have to. No, you don't. You don't have to. You are choosing to. And then you can put it back in the past as part of the pattern that you built for yourself. But it's not only with smoking cigarettes, it's being a jerk. It's saying, it's screaming, it's yelling, it's hiding in bed, it's kicking the dog or yelling, like whatever it is that you do. And you don't have to do those things that aren't working for you anyways. That's one of the gifts and beauties of being a human, is you actually have an opportunity in the next second to say, do, or be something different than you've been. And that's where true voice comes in again. You have an opportunity to actually speak yourself or to express yourself using other modalities. You don't have, so you might be able to use other mediums like art or music or dancing or singing or drama or cooking or writing or gardening. That's the creative 8 right there, to actually express yourself in ways that aren't words and listening, that can even express yourself in grander ways than even words, because words are limiting. But it's funny, you look at a beautiful piece of art or you listen to some amazing music, and there's some serious self-expression going on there and hitting you at levels that words can't hit you at. How many times have you noticed that there's art or music and the beauty of it is beyond words? That's what it is, beyond words, because words are self-limited. So, that's what's really here, is that I wanted to really put that point in, is that we are not slaves to the habits that got us to right now.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And back again, like you were saying, these conversations, right? It's if people don't have the opportunity to have that conversation with someone, or to give themselves an opportunity to introspect, right? To actually think about, like you were saying, well, the problem is my behavior, it's how I'm acting. And like you were saying, when the you don't feel like your actions are in line with who you are, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity, there's an empowerment with that
There is.
self-awareness.
Yeah, there really is.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's so powerful. And I love how you also mentioned you're starting with younger people who are entering the field of psychiatry, and younger people in general. I think I mean, I've got two teenage girls, and uh, they're susceptible, of course, to information, everything that's flying around. They want to feel accepted, they want to feel normal, but they think there is a normal, and they think that if they're not the way everything else, or the way certain other people are advancing in class or can do these certain things in sports, that there may be something wrong with them.
Right.
And having them making sure that they feel empowered to address these challenges, and that they have that self-awareness. I think with young people, and I'm sure you can speak much more eloquently to this than I can, but they it's very easy for them to look at adults, or to look at people in certain professions and say they figured it out. And or if a teacher is trying to explain something to them, and they can just think, well, yeah, it's easy for them to say they've been studying this for 30 years,
Yeah.
and kind of dismiss it and feel like, that's not me, I'm never going to be there, they've got it all together. And one of the things that I try to remind my kids, I try to explain to them that everybody is still figuring it out. Everybody's figuring
No
out.
doubt.
So when you're looking at the Olympics or something, or you see these gymnasts doing these amazing things, they're like, wow, how do they do that and land there and do this? Or you're watching someone walk across a tightrope and you're going, how do they have such balance? And I always say to them, you're not looking closely enough. They're not balanced. They're making
Yeah.
tiny adjustments all the time.
Yeah.
They're just further along, and their adjustments are harder to see, and they're
Yeah.
real time, and they're smaller, and they're faster. And
Yeah.
that's part of growth. So there's nothing wrong with being all over the place and having your emotions be high 1 minute and low another minute. There's nothing wrong with you. And they get down on themselves, and I try to work with them a little bit on that. But I love your approach in that you're leaving the power in their hands, and it sounds like the more psychiatrists who also have this mindset that you have, the undoctoring, that mindset that, hey, you want to keep as much power as you can, and our job is to keep you as empowered as possible for as much of your life as possible, and
For sure.
that's going to give you the most opportunities to grow, and hopefully without any medication. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And the other piece to this, which we often overlook, is that, you know, it it's normal to think you're abnormal.
Yeah.
That for sure is normal. And one of the traits of every single human is they're pretty sure they're different.
Yeah.
So if you think you're different, that just makes you the same, which is really great. It's good to get that. If you know you're different, that makes you even more the same. Because we all know we're different. I know I'm different. I know I am. I know I've been different since I started. But I never talk to anybody who doesn't think they're different. Yeah. And yet we're all the same. We're all the same because each of us knows that we're different. And because we know that, it becomes a human condition trait. So it's actually entirely normal to know that you're abnormal, which is very cool. And the other thing is that how do we know it? Well, we're doing this really flawed activity of comparing our insides to everybody else's outsides. And you can't do that. They're not direct comparison. It's not what I look like is certainly isn't what's going on inside of me. I promise. I can be a total mess inside and somehow still get away with being like a functional adult on the outside. And it usually is one that direction. It's rare that I look lousy, but I'm doing great. But I can look great and not be doing very well inside for sure. And I can even look like I got my act together because I speak articulately. I'm pretty passionate about what I say, and I'm entertaining. And I had done this a lot of times. So it can look like I've got this mental health thing under control. I don't. Here's what I know about mental health. Each and every one of it, like your diagnosis, if I had a diagnosis, I can diagnose you. You ready for your diagnosis? You ready?
Let's do it.
Here it is. Your diagnosis is Curtis Washington. There you go. That's your diagnosis.
Are you sure there's nothing wrong with me?
That's it. That's all you are. You're Curtis Washington.
I have to live with Curtis Washington then. Is that what you're saying?
It is. Exactly. That's it. That's what you have. That's your stigma. Your stigma is you got to walk around with Curtis Washington. And you've had to walk around with him since you arrived here, and you're going to walk around with him until the day you go. And that's your diagnosis, and that's it. That's it, dude. That's it. That's what you have.
So I should learn as much as I can about Curtis Washington.
That's a really good point. Yeah. You should. That's good. I like that. Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah.
I think so many people need to hear that they are who they're supposed to be, and
they are who they're supposed to be. It's all good. Exactly. There's no denying the fact that you're Curtis Washington. I mean, unless you've changed your name, that's who you are. And my diagnosis is Fred Moss. That's just it's what it is. My life is defined by being Fred Moss. That's it. Everything that's got me up until now has been Fred Moss. Who I am now is Fred Moss, and who I'm about to become, lo and behold, it's still Fred Moss. That's what I got here. That's it. That's my diagnosis. I don't need to be bunched into some syndrome or some disease model or some disorder. I don't. It's not even helpful. It's helpful for some others, like, oh yeah, that explains why he, likes to stay in bed too late in the morning, or that explains why he is awkward at a party, or that explains why he smokes too much weed, or that explains whatever. Maybe it doesn't explain anything. The reason he smokes weed is because he smokes weed. That's it. And he could stop smoking weed. That's the other thing. He could. The next time that he gets the opportunity to smoke weed, he doesn't have to light up. He just doesn't have to. He can say, I'm a weed smoker. I do have to light up. That's what I do. And then just bulldoze over it all and say that he's got this habit, or he's got this trait, or he's got this neural pathway that says that he's got to smoke weed. I challenge that.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Try not lighting up the next joint. See, then you didn't have to smoke weed. It's true. Now you could be like, I want to smoke weed. Okay, I suppose that's a different story. But that's no longer being run by somebody who has to smoke weed.
Yeah.
And that goes true with a lot of things, not just our good friend marijuana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Uh, well, Dr. Fred, I definitely want to be very respectful of your time, but I did want to ask one thing
Yeah, go.
before I let you go. We've covered so much today, and I think this is going to leave. I think there's a lot of gems that people can use to help them on their road to self-discovery and taking a closer look at who they are for who they are instead of trying to, like you said, trying to define who they are as a problem or define that they are being run by something that is bothering them, and they can get back into the this is who I am. Let's work on me and not let a condition or a situation that I'm going through kind of define who I am.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, and especially for younger people, there's a lot of insecurity, of course. I mean, we're all insecure, but younger people, of course, are very creative in trying to cover up those insecurities and make you think that things are going fine, even though they're really trying to kind of put masks on and deflect and all of these things. And back to your original point, we all want to be heard, and I feel that when you're younger, um, that's that's a window that closes on everyone. It closes so fast, and as you get older, and if you have not, you feel you haven't been heard, you find yourself in situations where your actions can be a lot more, they could be lethal, they could be extremely dangerous, self-harm. It becomes, the more access to power you have, be it money, be it things, the more damage you can do, right?
Yeah.
So I really, for younger people, I really would love if perhaps you could share one thing that they could start doing that would help them on that journey to self-discovery and realizing that it's completely okay to be who they are, and that they're beautiful, and that we're all one and the same. And what is, like you said, the more you realize you are different, the more you realize you actually are normal. What would
Yeah, I think it's really for all people because we're all essentially young people. But if we go back to the young people, we can go with this idea that, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe there's really nothing wrong with you.
yeah
We're sorry. We adults, we're sorry. We're sorry we served up a world that has you so flippin' confused. It's so confusing. It's so challenging. It's so in many ways, it's discombobulated. It's really hard to be a young person in the world today using sensibilities that God gave us and trying to make some sort of, sense about what's happening, like how to figure it out, what's really here to do, how to stay happy, how to contribute, how to be a contribution, how to be a good human being, how to be a friend, how to be a son or a daughter, how to be a good student, how to learn, how to be effective. It's really, really difficult. But when you get that there's nothing wrong with you and that we're all really struggling in these days to get to what's so, and, I think that the key thing is there's compassion and acceptance and forgiveness. I like those three words together. When we can be compassionate, accepting, and forgiving of ourselves and of the people, our friends around us, even the ones who are totally annoying, and there are plenty of friends out there who are completely annoying, then we have a foot up on the game. The idea, again, is that as long as we can listen, which it doesn't harm to listen, as long as we can listen to people who are in disagreement with us, we can actually set our GPS more accurately for the direction that we want to go. Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Maybe there's nothing wrong with you. I think that's key.
Yeah, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. That's beautiful advice. And it's almost like that could be a mantra, right? That'd be something that whenever someone is having those doubts or they feel that welling up within them, like, what's going on? What do I do? I know I wasn't made for this. I know this, I knew this, I knew I couldn't do it, or whatever. All these negative, when these doubts start to come up, to actually remind themselves of that,
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Well, one last thing, of course, we definitely want to make sure everyone knows where to find you and all the wonderful work that you were doing. So where would you like our listeners and watchers, our audience today to go to learn more about all the beautiful work that you're doing?
Well, the Dr. Fred 360, drfred360.com has most of what I'm up to, at least loaded up inside of that beautiful site. And you can click anything. You still have freebies there. You can get downloads of my PDFs of my books, both books, and you can get access to my courses, access to podcasts that I've been on, or access to podcasts that I've hosted. And you can even contact me. And I'll give your listeners a 20 to 30 minute discovery call as a function of actually listening to us today, so that we can discuss whether or not I am someone they might want to work with as a coach or a mentor or facilitator moving forward, or if they want to talk to me about giving a keynote or being on a podcast. Another place to find me would be at welcometohumanity.net, which is my earlier website, my main website. And that's a good place to see some of the things that are loaded up in my life. It's probably not as up to speed as drfred360.com, but it's more comprehensive. And then there's the things we had talked about, the True Voice course. TrueVoiceCourse.com is a great place that's a great course. I am very, very proud of that. Many people's blood, sweat, and tears went into the creation of that course. And it's a beautiful course. I really love it. TrueVoiceCourse.com is another space to find me. And then I'm all over social as well. I mean, I don't like being on Facebook, but there I am. And I like being on LinkedIn, and there I am. Those are my two favorite platforms as it is right now.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to make sure to include all of that in the show notes for today, so everyone knows exactly where to find all of that wonderful information. And people definitely take advantage of this. This is a free consultation call. It's a free discovery call. It's an opportunity to speak to Dr. Fred Moss live. So everyone out there, definitely, this is a wonderful opportunity to speak to someone who's making incredible headway in this space of really helping empower people to accept their humanness and to move forward with it, with growth and with love and with self-compassion and awareness. And it's what we all need. So definitely take advantage of that. So Dr. Fred, thank you so much for taking the time today. I feel like there's so many other things we could have discussed, so maybe we could do this again, but I'm just very grateful that we had this opportunity today. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Curtis. It's been beautiful to be here. You're a great interviewer. It's been a pleasure to be a partner with you today and opening up with these new topics for your listener. And I've really appreciated the honor of being on your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. If you liked what we've explored on this episode, then you'll love the Manifest Your Greatness coaching program. The Manifest Your Greatness coaching program is uniquely tailored to help support you on your journey to become the absolute best version of yourself. So if you are committed to taking the steps required to significantly and permanently level up in any area of your life, visit manifestyourgreatness.com/contact. Again, that's manifestyourgreatness.com/contact and schedule your free consultation call today. Talk soon.